that we approve item 2, 4, 7, and 8 on consent, if there is no objection. Hearing none, those are approved. And I should note that the full complement of council members on this committee are all present. Let's start with item number 1.
No.
Item number 1, communication from the mayor relative to the exemption of 2 assistant general managers and 2 assistants to the general manager for Los Angeles Department of Water and Power from civil service pursuant to Charter Section 1001B.
And if we could have someone from the personnel department come up for questions.
Council member, I'm Gloria Sosa with the Personnel Department. Are there any questions that I might be able to answer?
I suspect there are. I'd like to ask the Personnel Department to update us on the total number of positions currently exempted and the number that still may be authorized legally.
The current exemption count is 152. And what was the second question? I'm sorry. Oh.
How many, what's the ceiling currently?
The current exemption count is 152. Recently, the council approved an additional 50 exemptions over and above the 150 that we've currently been working under. So we're now dipping into the additional new 50 exemptions, and we are at 152.
And why should these specific positions be exempted from social service, from civil service?
Well, basically, the Department of Water and Power has requested these positions of the mayor and has identified certain expertise that are needed at this level for the Department of Water and Power, and the mayor's office has concurred on that and has recommended that the council exempt these additional positions.
So does the DWP currently have directors of information technology and marketing directors? And if so, how do these positions differ from the civil service positions?
Is there someone here from DW areas? Okay, thank you.
I'm Dave Wright, Chief Administrative Officer for the Department of Water and Power. 3 of these positions directly interact with customers and are to improve the customer service interactions from a management standpoint. One of them does that partly and also helps develop some leadership training to essentially improve not just the experience but the staff as they're learning and developing to move up into those positions.
So why the exemption?
The exemption is we need some external skill in marketing and customer service that isn't developed internally at this point. We've got a lot of internal experience. We need some individuals that have got more broad marketing, more broad customer service skills and training to come in and help us improve our interaction with customers. Frankly, from the implementation of the billing system, it showed we've got to focus significantly more resources, management skills, and experiences that aren't developed within the department to improve our interaction and customer experience.
Any other questions? Mr. Harris-Dawson?
Yes, so thank you. I certainly agree and have experienced the notion that the DWP's customer service is not the strong suit of folks that come up through the ranks there. So it makes sense. My question about these positions is, so you're saying the organization needs to build more expertise in this regard and sort of a new way of doing things, which I appreciate. Do you have a timeline for that? Like, how long is that going to take? Will this exempt position go on forever? Is it going to take 3 years, 5 years in order to get the organization to where you all think it needs to be?
The process has started already. And for background, I should say, I came in 6 months ago. Marcy hired me, and one of the key things she said was, the general manager at Marcy Edwards, was I want you to assist with really improving the customer experience. And what I've seen, we've got great staff and great employees. There's just at the upper management, mid-management level, we've got a great customer service director and some communications, strong communications staff. We need some more external support to implement that, and I see that as a 3 to 5 year slowly, when I say slowly, improving process, excuse me, I forgot to turn my phone off, a process that improves over time. Like I said, it's already going up, but it's incremental improvements on a continual, constant performance improvement basis.
Any other questions? If not, I'd recommend we approve the requested exemptions. Item number 3.
Item number 3, communication from the mayor relative to the exemption of one assistant director of sanitation in the Bureau of Sanitation from civil service pursuant to Charter Section 1001B.
Do we have anyone here from sanitation?
Good morning, Lisa Mowry, Chief Financial Officer, LA Sanitation. This request is for the new Assistant General Manager position that we received in the 15-16 budget. As is the norm for our executive team, we are requesting this to be an exempt position. This position will be overseeing part of our solid resources program. Essentially what we're doing is taking the entire program, which was previously under one assistant GM, and splitting it into two, with one position, this position focused on the operations side, while the existing position is focused on the other parts of our program, including the commercial franchise and our zero waste program. So the request for this position to be exempt is to allow us to cast a wide net to look for qualified candidates. We certainly feel we have qualified candidates in-house, but it is always good to look outside as well, so we could potentially bring in some outside expertise.
Now, the qualifications for this job look pretty restricted, so it leaves it very likely that it'll be an internal candidate from inside City Hall. Is that the department's intent, or do you want to expand the qualifications or look at doing that to attract a broader pool of candidate?
The qualifications are intended to be essentially or equal qualifications. The description is based more on the city policy as far as referencing experience at a division manager level, but certainly the intent is or equivalent from outside. We can certainly look at those qualifications to make sure in the job notice that it is clear that it is intended to be or equal.
Very good. Other questions? If not, we will approve that exemption without objection.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
when appropriate, number 7, we passed it on consent.
Yes.
I just had a quick question on that, if it's possible to bring that back, or I don't know.
When we get to 7, we'll just reopen
Great.
it.
Thank you.
Item 5.
Item 5, communication from the mayor relative to the re-exemption of one revenue manager in the Office of City Administrative Officer from civil service pursuant to Charter Section 1001B.
If you'd like to give us a brief overview of this one.
Sure. Good morning, council members. As some of you may recall, or some of you may have heard, the city back in 2010 had a commission on revenue efficiency that was looking at city revenues and whether or not the city can do some improvements, some efficiencies to collect basically revenue that was on the books but had yet to be collected. One of the recommendations made by that citizen commission was to appoint an Inspector General of Revenue Collections. So this position, after some a discussion with council and the mayor's office, was set to work out of the CAO's office, independent from the CAO, but looking over revenue collection issues. And we filled that position as an exempt position with actually, and that was to cast a wider net across just beyond the city. We actually ended up filling it with a city employee from the Harbor Department who filled the role and reported through the financial status reports, through his own independent reports on the status of billings and collections citywide and other revenue efforts across the city. This employee has since recently moved on to the Board of Public Works, where he's now the Chief Management Analyst at the Board of Public Works, and we would like to backfill this position again as an exempt position, not necessarily to extend a wider net across beyond the city, but more so the position is actually a classification called revenue manager, and there isn't a direct progression of classifications that lead to that management level position. So really the exemption will help us cast a wider net within the city to allow for individuals from different classifications to apply for this position. So we hope to be able to fill this position expeditiously and continue the great work that was put forward by the prior incumbent.
Now, we've made some progress on collections under the current manager. What do we expect to see the new manager do to make further progress?
Well, one of the last one of the items that we added to the revenue manager's portfolio more recently was oversight over the city's disaster grant management, in which case we are working closely with the state and FEMA to make sure that we are recouping everything that's owed to the city from prior year disasters and events. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but we still have on the books and are still trying to close out the Northridge earthquake disaster. So it's something that the city has put an additional effort on to make sure that we have all the proper documentation, and really a lot of it is the documentation from the departments that actually had to do the work to make sure that they are properly documenting all the resources that went into restoring service and getting the city back on track after that disaster, so that our documentation can uphold any audits that occur. And so that's been a recent add to that portfolio, and I'm proud to say that we have started to see some results. We're closing out events from 2010, from 2012, from 2013, and hopefully are preparing ourselves more so for the future events that will occur.
How is it that we're still working on the Northridge earthquake? That seems a little bizarre.
It is bizarre, and a lot of it is because, when the crisis is in effect, departments do what they need to do to get everything back up and running, and maybe do so without, and I can only speak to, from what, I've heard, I wasn't here during that time, but they do so without maybe the proper documentation or documenting employees' times, the equipment that goes into effect as they're trying to restore services, as they're trying to get everything back to place. So what's happening now is a forensic analysis, accounting, if you will, of trying to go back in history to make sure that we properly accounted for everything and that it's going to withstand an audit rather.
Would we actually ever audit something normally from 20%?
It wouldn't be a city audit, it would be a federal audit or a state audit that would occur.
And that we could be asked to go back that amount of time?
Yes, so whenever there's a final closeout of an event, as we call them, there's a time set, a clock starts ticking as to how long the feds now have to come in and audit that event. So even though the event could have happened decades ago, when it finally closes out, that's when the clock starts ticking as to when an audit could occur.
Well, you learn something new every day.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? If not, we'll move forward that exemption without objection. Item number 6.
Item number 6, Department of General Services report relative to the exemption of one construction and maintenance supervisor and one senior electrician in the GSD from civil service pursuant to Charter Section 1001B2.
Morning,
Welcome.
Harvey Wells, Personnel Department for General Services. We're requesting exemption of 2 positions for the installation of the infrastructure for the body camera project, which is the electrical, the charging stations in all the police stations for the body cameras.
So, Charter Section 1001D2 allows for the exemption of positions only when they're working on construction of public works improvements or buildings. So how does that fit in?
Well, it would be the construction of the electrical. The police stations currently are not equipped for the body cameras, so the electrical will have to be installed, and the charging stations will have to be connected to the stations. So it's a construction project.
And is there no civil service list from which this could be filled?
There is a civil service list, but this is a limited project. It's probably only going to last about a year or 2. So that's why we're requesting an exemption. And at that time, at the end of the project, those employees or candidates that are selected will return to their civil service position.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we'll move that exemption forward as well without objection. Item number 7, what's the proper way to reconsider this?
Let me go ahead and read it, then you can discuss it.
Okay.
Item number 7, City Attorney Report and Ordinance relative to amending the Los Angeles Administrative Code Section 10.5 to provide authority for the Personnel Department to enter into contracts with the city's Flex Benefit Program service providers for periods up to 5 years without council approval. This ordinance is the product from an action in connection with Council File 10-1627.
Can you make a motion to reconsider, please?
We'll move to reconsider this item without objection.
Thank you.
I don't need a presentation. I just had a quick question.
Okay.
Actually, it's more like a note. I read it. It seems completely fine. It's going from basically 3 years to 5 year, right? But in light of our last meeting, when we talked about the health benefits, remember there was some concerns about it? And I'm sure your office is already looking into it, Mr. Chair. But, so is it a better thing to go to 5, giving them the 5-year discretionary, or the 5-year term when it comes to?
Well, I think there are pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
Maybe we can ask the department to cover those pluses and minuses.
Sure. My name's Alex Vasquez. I'm with the Personnel Department. There are definitely some pluses and minuses. The JLMBC, who oversees our benefits, which is comprised of labor and management reps, had several meetings to discuss this process, and what they came up with is a recommendation that we go for 5 years. Traditionally, we typically end up going for 5 years anyway. So, one of the primary things that they were looking at just try to see if we can get better pricing if we go out to the market. I also want to note that this ordinance would apply for future contracts. We are going to go out to RFP for our medical and dental plans for plan year 2017. So we are going to incorporate some of the things that we discussed at the last POM meeting in that RFP process. So again, this would apply to future contracts, not the current contracts we have now. So primarily, some of the reasons that we're looking at wanting to go the 5-year route, as I indicated, that we traditionally already do that. We do these contracts in terms of their scope and complexity are quite large. We cover 60,000 lives, and so to move from one carrier to another is quite an endeavor, and there are a lot of concerns. We recently did change providers, and we provided a lot of outreach to employees to explain to them the changes in their medical plan. So, and there are a lot of behind-the-scenes issues that we have to address in changing providers as well. There's, things with systems and changing people's information over. So there's quite a bit of administrative changes and work that goes behind it. So one of the things we're trying to look at is trying to be more efficient, and we think that by testing the market and going out to bid for a 5-year contract, we'll see whether or not we get better pricing. We also are planning to look into developing programs such as a wellness program. That's something that we're considering, and so we think that if we try to incorporate that into a longer contract with the provider, they may be more willing to basically invest in our workforce and invest in our medical plan versus just having a 3-year contract. So those are some of the reasons that why we're recommending this.
So when you guys go out for a contract for medical and dental in 2017, the next contract will be for 5 years?
Potentially, yes. So the RFP will indicate that the contract could be up for 5 years. We also retain the ability to cancel or terminate the contract at any point. But in doing that, we typically would need at least 1 year's notice because it takes us that long to go through an RFP process to get another contractor on board.
Okay, so it's a flexible 5.
Yes.
You could do it, okay.
Just as right now it's a flexible 3, but in...
So if we went out to the market with a 5-year offer and we didn't get the kind of numbers we wanted, would we still go out for 5 years, or would we take a look at reeling it back into 3?
Yeah, I think that, we'll know once we get the RFP responses back and see what kind of pricing we get, what kind of price cap guarantees we might get as well. Those are all factors that we'll take into account, whether or not we should contract for 3 years or 5 years. It just depends on what we get.
So we'd be giving you the flexibility to do the 5, but we're not locking you into 5
Right.
in any way. You could still do a 3-year contract.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we'll move that forward as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I believe that is all the business before us.
We have number 10 there, sir.
9. We do 9? 9?
Or do I have?
9 and 10.
9 and 10? What? What happened? 9 and 10.
We did, excuse me. We didn't do 9, pardon me. We can proceed to 9, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's proceed to 9.
Personnel Department report relative to the Consolidated Reasonable Accommodation Report for the third quarter of fiscal year 2014-15. Got ahead of this.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Olivia Flores, Personnel Department.
Good morning, Dave Noltmeyer, Personnel Department.
The report describes the city's efforts to reasonably accommodate employees with temporary and permanent work restrictions due to industrial and non-industrial injury or illness. This report covers the third quarter of the fiscal year 14-15 and compares it to the same quarter of the last fiscal year. The Workers' Compensation Division reports employees with industrial injuries or illness. They track the light duty hours worked, which are the employees who are not able to perform their full duties but can do some duties. They track IOD saved, or the light duty hours times the employee's salary, and they track the IOD spent, which is salary continuation for employees who cannot work, employees who are home. Attachment 1 has, page 1 is the current fiscal year, page 2 is the prior fiscal year. And for Equal Employment Opportunity Division, we report on the reasonable accommodation requests within departments and citywide placement activity. Attachments 2 and 3. 2 is the department-wide, and 3 would be citywide placement activity.
Any interesting patterns that you've noticed in this in the past couple of quarters that might be notable for us to hear about?
Basically, they're not training the way we'd like them. Currently, light duty is down and IOD is up. That's not what we'd like. But that said, there's a number of drivers out there that are causing this. And first and foremost, what we'd like to stress is that the ability of somebody to either work light duty or to indicate that they cannot work is a medical decision that has limited recourse in disputing that. So this is what we're dealing with, is a medical doctor indicating that the city injured worker cannot work, or they can only work in a limited capacity. So that said, again, there's limited recourse in disputing that, and it can be a very time-consuming process. The other factor that can be driving this is a reduction in light-duty positions that a department may have, so that if we do get work restrictions, the department may not be able to accommodate them. In that circumstance, we work closely with EEO and the department to ensure that they really cannot accommodate this individual. And we do this on a departmental level basis, and we look at this on a monthly basis, both in the workers' comp division at a departmental level also. The other thing that is driving these numbers is the aging workforce. So we have our workers that are older at the time they get this injury, and so the recoup time for an older worker is longer than a younger person.
Is that why it keeps taking me longer?
So do we see any things that we could be doing that we aren't doing yet to try and improve the numbers?
I think we're going in the right direction. The major driver on the IOD costs is the sworn. They represent about 70% of the sworn IOD. And what we're doing is working with both the police and fire department with their medical liaison unit, medical liaison sections, and the risk management groups to identify, how these claims are occurring, because that's where we really need to focus, is reducing the claims. And if you don't have a claim, you don't have any IOD. And actually, after this committee meeting, we're actually meeting with LAPD risk manager to discuss this and to demonstrate the new claim system that the personnel department implemented about a year ago for the workers' comp claims.
We seem to have a pretty high percentage of claims among the sworn. Do we have any way to tighten that up?
Again, I believe, yes, it's working with the risk management group. I mean, sworn is just inherent dangerous type positions, but, working with the risk management group to see how an injury occurred and take corrective action so that hopefully it won't occur again.
Okay, any other questions?
Just a point of curiosity for the sworn workers. Is part of the risk management sort of physical training as people age to make it less likely that your bones and joints and stuff like that give out, given the physical demands of the job?
I mean, there's a component to that. Everybody ages, and so there's only so much that you can do to prevent that type of injury. But yeah, that'd definitely be something that we look at. And, PD does have a fairly aggressive training program, and so we'll be looking in that area.
Got it.
Great. Well, I believe this is just informational, so we will receive and file this report without objection. Thank you. And item number 10.
Item number 10, Personnel Department report relative to employee development, fiscal year 2013-14.
Good morning, Raylan Napper, Personnel Department. So this is a regular recurring report that comes before you annually as per the ad code. It covers the comprehensive training program for all city employees provided by the Personnel Department, as well as a survey of what city departments are, what training they're providing to their employees directly. The highlights for the Personnel Department provided training include our online training academy. Some years back, we transitioned from an classroom model that required a lot of staff and reached a few employees to an online delivery system that required less staff and reached far more employees. So in fiscal year 13-14, which this report covers, we had 27 online courses available and trained 3,969 employees on non-mandatory courses. 2013 was a compliance year for sexual harassment, as this year is, and we trained over 18,000 employees in sexual harassment online. And also Disaster Service Worker was launched and required in that year, and we trained a little over 3,000 employees in that year. The Workplace Violence Prevention Program entails training, and our consultants, Prince and Phelps, trained over 700 employees. At the end of the fiscal year, we developed an online version of workplace violence, which is now the main way of delivery of that training. We also started in 13-14 a core supervisory training, which is an in-person training consisting of 6 modules or 6 half-days where all supervisors from the 23 consolidated departments come and attend. And it just launched in that year, and we trained 62 supervisors. Last year looks a lot better with a little over 300. Then our MHN, our Employee Assistance Program provider, trained over 1,300 employees. And the most popular courses were delivering excellent customer service, creating positive work environment, ethics and integrity in the workplace, and managing stress. The highlights for the training provided by departments directly to their employees. 37 departments reported over 2,600 different training topics were provided. It's a little over 200 more than the prior year. And the largest audience included professionals, paraprofessionals, and technicians. The most common topics were field-specific professional and technical training, policy awareness, and occupational safety. LAFD used the Personnel Department's online training academy to deliver CERT training. That's the Community Emergency Response Team, and they trained or had over 27,000 courses completed, so a lot of training there. Appendix A covers mandated training. This includes anything required by state or federal law, or rule or policy, and departments reported over 861 sessions of mandatory training with a compliance of about 97%. In some areas, it's really hard to track compliance because of the way the requirements are and the way it's delivered. And also, I'll note, departments tend to be over-inclusive in what they report as truly mandatory. That's our observation. Appendix B is non-mandatory training. You can see police, airports, and general services offered the most to their employees. And then Appendix C covers tuition reimbursement. Yes, there still are a few departments that are able to offer that. And so 395 employees received tuition reimbursement in 13-14. And then finally, the report covers MOU training. Some of our MOUs provide for funds for employees to train, and a number of employees receive training under MOUs 6, 16, and 36.
So have we ever done any kind of analysis to see if there's a drop-off in quality between live training and online training?
Well, there are a lot of studies that for adult learners, online training is better because you have to click through, you have to pay attention, versus when you're in a classroom, you could maybe opt out of paying attention.
So it's less expensive, presumably, and more efficient.
Yes.
Well, that's a good thing. Anything we should be developing that we're not? Are we missing anything in our training portfolio that's...
Well, I have to say 14-15 and now 15-16 will be far more exciting. We have really grown and matured our online training academy, and we may be switching vendors soon. Also, we've developed an engagement measurement tool, an engagement program for departments, an employee recognition program. We have a new performance assessment program called CLEAR, and We're starting our succession planning efforts, and so all those coming together, we're really maturing our program and hitting the true needs of the city departments and employees right now.
How's our online training for management skills? Do we have a robust offering in that area?
We have a decent offering, and that's one area we're really looking to grow and supplement with in-person training. We just recently released an RFQ to develop an approved list of providers of a number of types of trainings, and leadership and coaching, executive coaching, and is on that list. So we expect to have a pre-approved list, so when there are issues or departments have need and a little money, they can just directly contract with these folks.
Great. Any other questions?
Quick question.
Mr. Rue?
For your city department-sponsored tuition reimbursement program, which departments are participating? 6 departments.
And that would be LAWA, so airports, police, Public Works Engineering, Public Works Sanitation, Public Works Street Lighting, and Fire and Police Pensions.
Sanitation.
Oh, I'm sorry, street lighting had 0. I don't know why that, yeah. So, engineering, sanitation, and fire and police pensions.
Did you say clean air?
No, fire and police pensions.
So Public Works, sanitation, what was the other?
Engineering.
Engineering. So how do they participate? They
have special funds. And the city used to have a citywide program several years ago. And it's generally the reimbursement is at the Cal State rate, or that's how it was. I think LAWA may not have those restrictions. But, yeah.
So that department has to find it in their own budget somehow, or?
Correct, yeah, through special funds.
So when was the citywide program?
I think the early 2000s is when that ended.
Okay. And it's because probably ran out of no money, right?
Yes. The first thing to go.
We considered going back to a citywide program now that our finances are a little more robust.
I'm not sure we're there yet. But what we have done is provided information for programs, degree programs to employees, and we have that on our website, which has just been revamped. And the University of Laverne has on-site degree programs in the city of Los Angeles, so we really promote those. They're always doing information sessions, and they have 2 or 3 locations. So, and they give a discount to city employees. So.
How much of a discount, just
I think it's $100 credit. So.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's a good school. So. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, one quick one. So is there any grants or different funding streams that we could apply for to restart the citywide program?
For tuition reimbursement? Not sure about that. You know, our current online training provider hooked us up with a grant writer for free to try to apply for some grants. We were unsuccessful for the few we applied. They were a little different, focusing more on internal training, but we can certainly look into that.
Okay. I'd like to follow up on that.
All right.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, we will receive and file that report as well. Thank you. And now we really are adjourned.